My name is Laurens Jan. My parents did that to me. I just introduced myself to Andre, who's sitting over there, and he said, "Huh?" I said, "LJ is fine." I've been at Bain for 16 years, and I love actually. I love my job. It's a great job. It's I make money, making my clients more money, making their customers happier. So it's like a triple win, and I get to do a lot of it. And so I got to do it for a lot more cycles to go. Bain, a lot of people. I've heard the name Fred Reichelt already. I guess you know Bain. We do a lot of customer work. About 20% of what we do is around customer experience. We do a lot more, but today is about this. I can talk for hours, and I might, but Ian's going to keep me shorter here. So I keep focused on 4 things. And these are the 4 things. The first one is obvious, but it's a good reminder. The second one is unfortunately still a bit, for me, obvious. We measure a lot, but we don't do enough as companies, including Bain, by the way. And then number 3 is actually, Adam asked me, monetization of NPS and customer experience. Can you bring some really practical examples? So I'll try to do that. You can judge whether you think it's practical enough. And then you can also talk a little bit about how Bain is doing that. First, the obvious part. NPS still is the #1 indicator of profitable growth. It is. This is actually a page I made about 2 quarters ago for a logistics company. Again, you see that a promoter in green spends more, actually also grows share of wallet over time more, pays more higher prices, refers more, cost less. We all know it conceptually. Still, I challenge you, make that page, because your CFO at some point is going to ask you for a business case for your investment in shorter waiting times and so forth. You don't have the page. Unfortunately, you have no case. So make the page. More importantly, the challenge that I see time after time with my clients is something that's very similar to when we want to lose weight. We measure the weight in kilograms or pounds or wherever you're from. And then you buy your fitness equipment, and it's there. But then you actually don't step on it. And then I challenge you, if you would measure your weight every single day, you're going to hate the damn skill. You're going to hate it. And you don't want to see the weight anymore if the weight doesn't go down. Even worse, if you even put effort in, but the weight doesn't go down, because your body down the line actually is actually feeding you sort of still the same fat food, then actually you really get fed up and frustrated. You may even leave. Unfortunately, not just people are like that. Clients in my company, the clients I work for, are unfortunately also way too often like that. Right? They measure, but they don't act. That's bad. If you are a company like that, you better stop measuring. Just stop it. And this is an example actually of a company I'm working with right now. I will not mention any names, but they are what I described as the reporting or measuring doom loop. It's bad, huh? It's a doom loop. What happens actually if you only measure but you don't act? If you only measure what you don't get to, actually you don't get into the root causes of the feedback, right? Why are certain customers not happy? You cannot make people accountable for a score. You can make people accountable for operations, the business unit operations, the business unit support, and so forth. They are accountable for operations. So if you don't actually go from feedback to operational data, there's no way you get people accountable. If you don't have people accountable, you don't get actions. If you don't get actions, your customers are going to notice it. Let me fill out the survey once again. I've done it 5 times. Nothing happens. So what happens? The response rates go down. And when response rates go down, you get even less customer insights, and you actually go into the doom loop. You don't want that. Then just stop measuring. I mean that. Here's actually 3 very practical pieces of advice I have for you. The first piece of advice actually is to do what you think is actually what you use NPS most of the times for, fix issues. But now, please start actually connecting it to operational data. I will show you examples of that. The second one actually is to connect customer feedback with sales data, right? And actually steer your sales organization with that. The third one actually is to use, this is a bit more advanced, to restructure your product portfolio, your service tiers, using feedback. There's magic in that feedback, and I can show you how. To start with actually the first one, improving issues. The magic is in customer journeys, right? And why do strategy consultants do this kind of work? Because it's all about prioritization, prioritization, prioritization. That's at the heart of what we do, strategy. Choosing. Choosing what journey to focus on, choosing what episode within that journey to focus on, tying that then to operational data, make people accountable for it, define the action, build the business case, get the buy-in from the CFO. In other words, power, you need that power. Execution, that's the magic in the operational data. And the culture to do this over and over again. Right, Adam? Prioritization of journeys. This is a page actually from a tech company I work with in the US. They have lots of customer journeys. They have about 37. Hard to choose. Ask your customers. So basically, you could actually, every bubble here represents a journey of the customer. The further you go to the right, the more often it is cited by a promoter as a reason to promote. The further to the top, the more often it is cited by the detractor to detract. So you can plot them, right? Second, you can compare them yourself versus competitors. You can ask, we can ask anonymously, also our competitors for the same journeys. And what we see for them is that the I Get Help journey was crucial. Second step, episodes. This is the same journey. These guys were not doing actually that bad on the I Get Help, but they could do much better. This is actually an episode for one particular product. What we found is actually the episode, the interaction with the service engineer is crucial. Great. What's going to change? Nothing. Because nobody's responsible for this yet. So who is responsible? Turned out for this particular product, we found actually that it was actually, there were senior and junior engineers responsible for the journey, taking customers through the help journey. And we found that actually it was the junior engineers that were struggling, and they're getting lower scores. Why was that? And this is really getting into the heart of this is really analytics. It were particular product features, when issues were happening with those kinds of features, only then we saw that the junior engineers were getting lower scores. The joke is actually, in most cases, they get higher scores. And we noticed that actually was mostly because of the way they interact with customers. Much more engaged, much more, let me help you, let me figure this out. Whereas the more senior engineers had seen the problem times before. But then also we could find it was per particular error messages. Super practical, actually. So what we did is we say, okay, what can we do about this? And sometimes the answer is very obvious. You just route the issues to the more senior engineers. Meanwhile, you actually put more experienced engineers also in the same team. You build a training program, and you fix the root cause of the product. But those things cost money. So what you focus typically on my clients is focusing on the left-hand side. And then you go to the CFO with the left-hand side of the page, and then you run into the power issue. And if you are not able to bring in the right-hand side, which requires the first page with the customer behavior mapped to NPS and so forth, you actually run into a roadblock. So take that. Second example, Salesforce. This is very different. What we're just talking about now was actually real operations. So you work with a very transactional survey. We saw that the NPS darling, where are you? But this is very different. The question here is, again, we need to choose, but this time I'm choosing what customers, or sorry, what sales individuals, what sales employees should I send to what customers, right? With what pitch? Because you have an almost infinite amount of customers where you could send them to, but you need to choose, because you only have so many sales employees. I only have one page to illustrate this example. This is another technology company. This is a complicated page, 2 by 2, bigger bubble, smaller. This is consultants, they love this stuff. Let me explain. So every bubble on this page represents a B2B account. I can give 2 away. The bottom right is Verizon, top left is Bank of America. They buy stuff. The further the bubbles to the right, the happier the account is. Right? There's about, for Verizon, about 40 people fill this in. For Bank of America, about 62. About 62. But the higher the bubble is on the page, the higher the share of wallet is of that account. Now, there's some interesting stuff actually that we saw when looking at this page with the sales, strategic sales manager was his name. And first we saw a correlation. Of course, happier customers buy more. You would expect that. But the funny thing is, some people would say, so the engineers in this room say, yeah, but the correlation is not that strong. But that's where the magic is. Because actually, really where the outliers are is where the action needs to happen. So first on the bottom right, turns out this is a promoter, Verizon. 100% NPS, everybody loved the product. So we called them and said, why are you only buying 30% of what you could buy from us? He said, what you didn't know is we have 3 business units. Yeah, I buy all the equipment from you actually for our own internal use, but there's also like the network that we have, the retail, and they're separate buyers. He said, can you recommend us? Yeah, I'm 100% likely to recommend. There was 30 million right there. Huh? Very simple. But you need to know. The other example is Bank of America. Actually, very, very large client, and they're running equipment in all the branches. It turns out that there were some issues in the branches. All these customers were calling into the support center, but there was no central flagging system that allowed them to see that these issues were popping up all over the US. Over here we saw that there's something was actually terribly wrong. This is close to 0 NPS. So what is going wrong, or actually negative NPS? Turns out that the executive team was already debating whether they should switch supplier, because they saw these issues popping up everywhere because the branches were down. That's an issue, right? Now imagine you would send your sales employees not to these accounts, how much you would miss out or avoid to protect. And imagine you would send them with the same message, with the identical message to the account. It wouldn't work, right? Hello, Mr. Bank of America. I hope you're happy. No, I'm absolutely not happy. You need to fix the issue. The third example I have is proposition tiering. And now imagine you're a company with, this is also a real example. This is actually another company of a client of mine. 60 plus NPS. Are you going to fix issues? No. You can, but does it really move the needle to go from 60 to 65? Or are there ways to premiumize the experience? Are there additional services you could add on top that you could monetize? The answer is you can. And there used to be another page right up front before this one. This actually is the draft, so thank you, Ian. Here's the real story. So when we were working with this client, we noticed that they actually had an excellent service level for everyone. And the service model was, we have routers and switches. You can imagine what client this is. We have routers and switches, and if they break down, we'll send in a service agent to you, and they'll help you fix the issue. But we also noticed that sometimes at the same service levels, you can see that in the operational data, still NPS would be high or low. And what we noticed actually, there was typically retail outlets, banks, airports, and hospitals having a very low NPS at the same service level. So we started to see a pattern here and discovered that actually certain customers have much more advanced needs than others. In the words of our client, the cost of downtime, of not having very fast access to the best engineers, is so high that it doesn't matter I just need to have the best, because the business case for them is so compelling. Whereas for a factory or even an office building, you could maybe wait a few hours maybe, but definitely you don't need to have somebody on site. So what we started to construct was actually a good, better, even better, best option, where I tell you the best option is a multitude of pricing of good. So you don't sell it to everybody. But the interesting thing was that you could actually put your sales force really to work. You could actually take the offer and you have all the feedback from customers and you have your segmentation, so you know exactly the hook. You have a reason to reach out. We heard your feedback. We may have a solution for you. And the interesting thing is, and I'm not sure I have this page in, I do have it, that we as Bain also, we thought that that we should focus on the promoters. Because I should not go to the Bank of America example and tell them, like, hey, you're so unhappy, let me sell more to you. But we thought, no, you should go to the promoters. But actually, we discovered something very interesting. Yes, you absolutely go to promoters and try to sell more. But it was actually, the detractors were a very, very interesting upsell hook. You would just do it differently. You said, I know you have this need. But I have a proposition for that. You just saw the wrong proposition. I don't want you to pay for it. I just want you to try it out. And then you give them sort of the fast access, on-site support, and let the team try it out for a couple of months, actually. And then we use the feedback from the people on site to show how actually the NPS improved over time, and then took that feedback to the decision maker. And that actually got people hooked onto the more expensive product. So what we found out was very interesting was the detractors are a very interesting way to upsell. How are we on time? Very good. Yeah, this is because part of the presentation is not in there. That's fine. The other question I got from Adam is, can you tell me, LJ, because I know Fred is here, but he's probably coming tomorrow. If you claim as Bain that you can help so many companies, 3,000 plus companies, whatever, on NPS, how do you do it yourself? I wanted to share actually two ways in which we as Bain do that. I know you have not put the materials in there, so I will just do it verbally. The first way is to focus on your clients. It's very, very, very important. And I have some examples of how we do that. The second example, though, is something that I think all of you should start doing as soon as possible, is to focus on your employees at the same time. And it turns out actually that if we do that as Bain, we get actually much more even results than just focusing on our clients. Let me explain to you how that goes. At Bain, every day, a Bainee lives by the motto of my core business, and we get that trained from like 16 years ago until this very day. We are in the core business of actually creating promoters. And that actually works very, very well in B2B. So when we go to clients, we go to you, maybe sometimes it's a bit uncomfortable in the very first conversation. You say, my business model, my personal business model, is to sit together with you and make you ultimately a promoter, right? Because you are going to deliver me the next project somewhere else. You can recommend me somewhere else, and I want you to sort of come back to me and continue to work with me. So that's my model. Maybe there's also a fee for the team, but that's my model for you. And I'm quite sure that if you do that with your clients, it's a universal philosophy. So that's number one. The second thing is just what you would recommend your own company to do. Prioritize. Just we have weekly meetings with our own team where you just make an org chart of the client. You say who is mapped to what client, and have you made the client already a promoter? And what would you need to do in order to get a step closer to that? And then we start writing very, very concrete actions for the week, for the month, for the quarter, of what would it take for you to turn your client into a promoter. Very important, like focus, very practical actions. And then we just run the process very rigorously. That's actually on the client side. There's a few other things I can share, but I guess this is the most important. The other thing is actually something that I see is often omitted, and that is your own people. You're all senior leaders. What you would benefit from, I think, is trying to actually get your feedback from your team in two ways. We do it at Bain on a weekly basis. You could call that transactional NPS. The second thing is actually by doing it annually, where you get the more structural feedback. We are living at Bain, we are a bit lucky in our business. I think we're having a much more supply-constrained business. And what we need mostly is individuals who would love to work with us. And so what we do actually, we run weekly pulse checks. That's how we call them. They're very, very quick surveys. There's 4 or 5 questions, They're anonymous, right? We get the feedback in, and we discuss that every week as a team. You do not see actually who the feedback is from, but you do see from the 5, 6, 7, 8 people in your team who you get the feedback from, what the scores of the week. And what it creates is a conversation that is actually very, very safe. Because it's not personal. It's just me speaking on behalf of the team. I might think what's going on. And it actually allows the team to have a very safe conversation about what do I need from this team. And the team starts to realize also that everybody has different needs, but together we can get to a point where actually everybody's happy. And we actually find that actually it's the employee engagement that actually gets you the real engaged employees at the clients and deliver better results for our clients. If I have to make it, there's more stuff in there. If I have to sum it up, I'll just go to my summary page. Although it's obvious to you, build that connection between NPS and real customer behavioral data that explains and quantifies the correlation between NPS for your company and your customers to profitable growth. Do it. You need it. The second thing is actually take action when you measure or just don't measure at all. Very, very ruthless on that. Act. The third thing is actually to bring in operational data. I cannot make anybody accountable for a score. I can make people accountable for operations. It's very, very important. The other tip in the same category, number 3, use it with sales data. Measure just for, and not just for your large accounts, actually mostly your middle accounts. Steer your sales organization on NPS and share of wallet or any other leading metric, retention. Just do that. And the fourth thing is use NPS also within your own organization. It's in the end the employees, and it was said very well also in the Dun & Bradstreet presentation. It's the NPS darlings that delivers, not you. It's the NPS darlings that deliver actually the value to the customers. If you don't do that, you're missing out on a cultural point. That's it. Any questions? Yeah.
I think we have a question up front.
Thanks, LJ.
Ooh, tough question. This is a tough question. It's you.
I could do the tough stuff. By the way, I love the charts, and you went so fast on them almost. But there was some really good stuff in there. I'd love to maybe follow up on a podcast or something like that to do that stuff. But one thing I thought was really thought-provoking, we heard from Justin earlier on about how he was getting twice the revenue from promoters that he does from detractors. But you said something that was counterintuitive. You go, the detractors are actually the ones that you can maybe upsell the most.
Yeah.
And can you drill into that a little bit more? Because I love that story you had from the router manufacturer. Can you tell a little bit more about how one could make that practical?
Yeah. And by the way, the 2 times, that's the average, right? And it is very inappropriate, but our supervisory board leader, it's a woman, says the average customer has 1 tit and 1 ball. It doesn't exist. Sorry, that's what she said. So the average is interesting, but also in the case of this particular client, this client was so was actually very much locked into. Also, customers were very much locked in. It was actually hard for customers to switch. And so what you see actually is that the benefit of turning somebody into a detractor is in that case also smaller. Whereas there are another companies, the difference can be much bigger. I guess the interesting lesson that we learned about the detractor was just really in the segmentation. It's the 1 tit, 1 ball example. I'm sorry, but it's just very not actionable. So you really need to understand like what are the different needs of customers, and I bet you even like if you start setting targets on NPS, set them also on that segment level. Also with one of my logistics clients right now that I'm working with, we see that the larger, more advanced customers have much higher needs about technical integration in the supply chain. Visibility that is real time, point of sales checkouts that are integrated with, they want to automate everything, whereas the smallest one, they just want to actually drop off, the package at a convenient location. If you manage for the average, you're gonna miss out. So segmentation is a very first thing. The second thing is looking at using feedback as an indicator of what somebody needs, and it's not just fixing issues. A need tells you actually what you can also monetize. And so we were lucky at the time to work with an executive in the technology company that said, I don't want to give everything away for free. I want to find a way to monetize, either through retention or through upsell. So we're really challenged by that. And it's not obvious. So you need to challenge yourself to look into that. And then the third thing is freemium. Yeah, it also works in B2B. But the detractor has a need that is unmet. If you can match that unmet need with actually something that you have to give away, you have an upsell in your hand. Right? So but you need to be a match between something you have to offer and something that they need. If you don't have it to offer, you can say goodbye. They're at the wrong supplier. But if you have it, they're just at the wrong proposition. So it's those three things: segmentation, looking at the needs, and the freemium model. Any other questions?
I do. I have a loud voice. It's fine. Thank you. You can hear me, right?
I can perfectly.
Yes. I actually, because Bain is such a force in a promotion,
Thank you.
You shared, how you do it, but could you give us some juicy stories about customer feedback and what you do with it? Some really good, bad, and ugly. I would love to know how Bain actually listens to their customers and addresses the feedback.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you. I think the magic is there. So if you want to, if not, then I'll buy you a drink.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. Well, the first example that comes to mind is a funny one. In the end, I think also customer happiness is about expectations minus reality. And so when we run our surveys with our teams, but then the customers, I always encourage the team to actually close the loop with their own client. Their own client. So I give them ownership, first of all, even when they're like two months into the job, you have your own clients. And I want you to close the loop and have the follow-up conversation. And then I also said, just look out for two things. The first thing is, when a customer is really in a dire situation, that is your opportunity. Like when a customer, a client emails you at 11 p.m., oh crap, I have this presentation, and it's not part of your scope, then you have an opportunity to go outside of the ordinary because you exceed the expectation. So I always challenge them to do it. The one example that I once got, and I love that example, and I've shared it a couple of times, is strawberry ice cream. And so we filled out the client filled out a survey. There were lots of responses, 40 of them, and there was one named promoter who put in his name. And we asked, is there something that we can do even better? You know what we asked to promoters. And then he said, strawberry ice cream. So, and then the associate came to me and said, what should we do? He's like, buy strawberry ice cream, send it. And honestly, it's a very to me, it's a very inspirational example because it's so silly, but it is for me a way to empower the individuals in your team to do something that exceeds the expectation. And I've used that example with my client once, and they came also up with a very nice idea. They said every individual needs to have a little budget for every month, like it's just a few euros, where they can do stuff like that, something funny. And so let me share that example.
Thank you. I think that's actually linked to Justin's wages, because they do it as well. They give that opportunity to the frontline staff. So I think you've led by example there, unknowingly.
Well, when you do it for 16 years, sometimes you have good examples, but we also struggle sometimes.
I thought Camille was going to ask you what your NPS score was. How good is your program is the question, right?
Yeah, so we're super religious on an account level about NPS. So I know that the NPS of my last account was 68. I know the tech company was 82. And my current client, I don't know yet, because we're sending it out soon. For us, what is very, very important, we empower the front line. And yes, we measure actually on an annual basis, we measure NPS sort of by practice, by region. The most religious number for us actually is nowadays our employees. Amsterdam office is at 69, which I recommend Bain to a friend. And for our clients, we aspire it to be at least above 60, and we've hit that this year. So that's great. But very, very important is to make NPS scores visible on an account level and then celebrate the success. Make it visible, celebrate success. Visible, we do it on a team level, we do it on an account level. Right? So you actually see aspirations, you can also know who to go to when you see something exceptional. We even give out rockstar, we call people rock stars when they get the highest feedback, 100% scores. And they get visible drumsticks with Rockstar Bain logo in it. And I know exactly that somebody next door to me has 6 of them. I know. And it's those examples that a positive reinforcement. I saw that Cisco, they had like big belts, so like these boxing champion belts, huge belts. And once every quarter they give out these belts. It's a celebration of individual successes, not the big company scores. Because that's like a better environment, we say in Holland, it starts with yourself. You can put the trash out. You don't need to wait for the big green factory to be built. An individual can really make a difference, so celebrate the small victories. Anyway, I guess I'm running over.
I have a strong feeling you got a 10 from most people in the room on that one, so thank you. Thank you, LJ.